the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Yaron Brook Show. Welcome on this, it's Labor Day today, Labor Day. We get to celebrate labor. It's so cool that in America, Labor Day is not on May 1, the communist holidays. So here we kind of separate it out. You celebrate work, production, labor, business. We should be celebrating businesses maybe with a sale at the mall. Happy Labor Day, everybody. I hope you're enjoying your long weekend. I certainly am. Looking forward to spending this afternoon by the pool. I was in the pool yesterday. It was 110 degrees. 110 degrees in Southern California yesterday, and I got to be outside. Got to be outside swimming in the pool. That was a lot of fun. All right. We're talking Celtics. Yeah, it's a big game today. Game 5. The series is tied 2-2. I can't believe it's tied 2-2. They should have been up 3-1 maybe. But it's tied 2-2, so they better win today. So we will see. We've got some Raptors fans in the audience. We've also got some Celtics fans. So it's a mixed group. I'm not sure I'll be able to watch the game today, funnily enough. We've got guests coming, and might land up not actually seeing the game. So be it. It is what it is. All right, we've got Adam from Edinburgh, Scotland, and I'm hoping to be back in Edinburgh, Scotland soon. You guys need to solve the COVID problem and allow Americans in. Actually, all you need to do is allow Americans in, and I'm coming. And you got to go back to school. I don't know if the University of Edinburgh is opening up again. But yes, anytime I'm invited to any university, for that matter, anywhere in the world, I'm eager to come. So those of you who are affiliated with universities, affiliated in the United States or anywhere else, who would be interested in having me come and speak, please let me know. Love to come to South Africa. That's one of my goals, is to come to South Africa, and I'm hoping that happens in the next few years. But yes, absolutely, send me an email, yaron@yaronbrookshow.com, and express interest in me coming to speak at your. I mean, assuming you can organize an event, a hall, a audience, and a respectable audience. It's 100 people would be nice. 100 people. We didn't get 100 in Edinburgh. We didn't get anywhere close to that, but 100 people would be nice. Right? It was a cold, rainy day in Edinburgh when I was there. All right, today we're doing current events, right? Because I never do current events. I only talk about these abstract, detached topics. So today we're going to do current events to please those who want to talk politics all day long. And actually, today's show was inspired by an economist who I have a huge amount of respect for, and I read his blog, and I think he's one of the best economists out there, and certainly one of the most interesting economists out there, even if I don't agree with him all the time. He's always got something thoughtful and interesting and thought-provoking to say. David's asking, my father's from South Africa. Actually, both my father and my mother are from South Africa. Both my parents were born in South Africa. And the economist is John Cochrane from, I guess he's at the Hoover Institute today. He was at the University of Chicago. He has a blog called thegrumpyeconomist.com, and I've encouraged you in the past to regularly read The Grumpy Economist, because I think he's good and he's interesting and, again, thought-provoking, and he'll get you thinking about the issues in a smart, non-hysterical, non-crazy partisan way. But he's just a free market guy, and he knows his stuff. He knows economics of certainly of a particular type. Right, so he's not an Austrian, but he's well-schooled in the Chicago school. He's a finance guy, really. He's a PhD in finance, taught finance for many years. So he's like me, finance guy who's a little grumpy and who talks about economics. There you go. That's why I like John Cochrane, because he's a little bit like me. Anyway, John wrote the last 3 blogs, and all of them were great. So I said, okay, we'll just use them for the show today. So one Whoa, there's an encoding overload. I don't know what that means. Let's hope the encoding overload subsides. Encoding overload. Anybody know what encoding overload and OBS means? I've never seen that message before. My computer's going to blow up. All right, we'll see what happens. Let me know if the video deteriorates. So he wrote 3 essays, one on the looting, one on California fires, and one on government debt, on the government debt crisis. And I figured I'd talk about all 3 topics because they're interesting in the news and they're important topics. And then, of course, throwing COVID. John has actually written a lot about COVID, and he's one of the more rational voices out there about COVID. And so on. Somebody asked if I debate Nick Fuentes. Absolutely not. I do not debate racists. I do not debate anti-Semites. I do not debate, scum like that. I consider Nick scum. So no interest in debating Nick Fuentes. Anybody who's an anti-Semite, I don't debate. That's good, or racist. That's a good starting point. All right, let's jump into this. I mean, let's start with riot and looting. We're seeing continued riots, particularly in Portland. It's hard to tell if there are riots in other cities because the news media is so lame in terms of reporting on this. There's almost no reporting. I mean, the Democrats realize that if Trump has a chance in winning, then it's the riots they're gonna create that opportunity, open up that opportunity for him. The more looting, the more rioting, the more violence, the more mayhem there is in cities, particularly Democratic cities, the more the Trump administration is going to pivot towards law and order, the more I think it can rally its, not just its base, but I think people in the center, independents, 90% of Americans, I'd even say 95% of Americans are anti-riots and looting. Maybe even 99% of Americans are anti-riots and looting. So, I mean, some of them might, armchair leftists might vocalize some support for it. But as soon as it gets in their neighborhood, they're immediately against it. Right? And that could dramatically increase the number of people coming out to vote for Donald Trump, and that I think is his one chance of actually winning the presidential election. So it really is. This is the issue. This is the issue that could sway the election, and Democrats know this, and the media, which is most of the media, not all of the media, but it's clearly most of the media who are interested very much in Trump losing. I just not making a big deal out of the riots and the demonstrations. So you have to scour the media to find it, and certainly Portland, because there's a lot of coverage. It's happening every night, and the video I saw last night was in residential neighborhoods and fires. There's actually a pretty funny, sad, pathetic video of them, throwing, I guess, Molotov cocktails or whatever, setting stuff on fire in the street, and this one rioter jumping over the fire, and basically his trousers catching fire, and he's running around with his trousers on fire, pants on fire, and people are trying to put out the fire and everything, and I have to say I laughed, as sad as that is. I laughed because, he clearly is an idiot. He was jumping over this fire, and he's rioting. That's 2 strikes against him, and he kind of deserved it. So and the frantic effort to try to put out the fire, and they're not prepared. They have no clue what they're doing. It's anyway. It's sad and pathetic. And what's sad and pathetic is, look, there's always a fringe within a culture that wants to see things burn. There certainly is a fringe here that's nihilistic and wants to destroy and loot and tear everything down. What is truly pathetic is not them. They always exist, and they're, I think, still an insignificant portion of the American public. I think what's really pathetic, what's really sad, what's really depressing, what's really concerning, and what really should worry all of us are the people who don't care, or the people who try to justify it, or the intellectuals giving this intellectual ammunition and presenting theoretical justifications for all this is going on. That, I think, is what should really scare us. And I want to talk about the book, in defense of looting again, which I talked about a week ago. I've now, there's a number of other reviews that have come out in the book that are interesting that I'm going to recommend, and John Cochran writes about it. It's good to see people catching on to this book. It's good to see people critiquing this book. It's good to see this book getting the prominence it deserves from a negative perspective. Right? Now, before I do that, I just want to let everybody know, I don't know if you know this, but in Portland, Oregon, where these riots are going on every day, we're actually, one of my supporters, one of the listeners to the show, has raised some money. Thank you, Ragnar of the Desert, for helping fund. Fund yesterday, of course, was phenomenal. We raised over $1,000 here on the show. But Ragnar is also instrumental in getting funding for 2 billboards. He's going to be putting up, this Portland supporter is going to be putting up 2 billboards in Portland. They're not going to be a big billboard on the I-5, I guess, that goes through the main part. They're going to be 2 smaller billboards in 2 locations in Portland. I don't know exactly where they're going to be, but it's going to be exciting to watch what happens. So as soon as the billboards are up, I will let you know. As soon as the billboards are up, we'll see if subscribers or listeners to the show or contributions or any of these other parameters budge, and we'll see whether this idea of billboards it works. But it's truly interesting. It's truly going to be interesting in the hub, in the center of rioting, in the center of where the far left is strongest, it seems, and is wackiest and is most evil. To have 2 billboards for the Yaron Brook show is going to be exciting, and it's going to be interesting, and it's going to be, we'll see if they burn them down. That'll make the news. Imagine seeing one of those billboards go up in flame, being filmed on Fox News, and with my picture and the URL being flashed across the Fox News things. Derek posts, Matt Ridley, How Innovation Works is in the Amazon Top 200 because he was on Fox yesterday. Television sells books, no question. Television is great. Whenever I've come out with books, I've been banned by Fox. It's happened every single time. Yeah. They've never let me promote. They didn't let me promote Equal is Unfair, and they didn't let me promote Free Market Revolution. Pretty sad in terms of. I think only Stossel and maybe Neil Cavuto allowed me to promote Free Market Revolution once, but the bigger shows refused to allow it. Derek says, please order if you haven't yet to carry the momentum. Absolutely. I mean, Matt Ridley's How Innovation Works is a phenomenal book. The stories are just amazing, and I would definitely recommend it. I'm actually reading one of his other books right now, The Evolution of Everything. And again, like his other books, I disagree with certain aspects of it, certain of the deeper philosophical aspects, but fantastic. So interesting, so much history, and so interesting in terms of getting you thinking about the evolution of ideas that I would definitely do that. So please, support Matt Ridley and Matt Ridley's work. He's a fantastic thinker and important fighter for the right cause, really for the right cause. All right. Let's see, where were we? Oh, yes, we were talking about the fact that if it was just the looting, if it was just the riots, everybody can see the immorality, the irrationality, the nihilism, the truly disgusting aspect of that. And there's a massive movement against that, right? Against rioting and looting and so on. But it's the intellectuals who provide justification for it, who provide cover for it, who provide moral defenses of the looting, who say looting is good. It's the armchair leftists who sit in their comfy homes, typically several $1 million homes, and are silently or, maybe among their close friends, supporting the looting. It's the people who donate money without thinking about where it's going and that much of their money goes to the looting. That is the real ugly part of all of this. That is what is really horrific. And I told you last time, or a few shows ago, about this book in defense of looting. And now there is a review of this book by, I can't pronounce her name, Graeme Woods in the Atlantic magazine. So I definitely recommend this review in the Atlantic magazine. Go there, support this review, give it a thumbs up, because it's got a lot of good stuff, and it really rips this book apart. It really shows the true evil of this book by quoting it, by critiquing it, by exposing it for what it really is, which is pure and utter communist nihilism. Well, communist is, no, it's egalitarian nihilism. The real advocacy for the destruction of the world in which we live. That's what this book is about. NPR, who did this very favorable, positive interview with the author of the book, summarizes the book as an argument that, quote, looting is a powerful tool to bring about real lasting change in society. It is. If the change in society you want is the destruction of capitalism, the remnants of capitalism, the destruction of markets, the destruction of private property, the destruction of the American system of government. If you want authoritarianism, if you want authoritarianism that knocks everybody down into poverty, if you want the elimination of everything that has made this country good, prosperous, and successful, then yes, looting is a powerful tool to bring about real lasting change. But the change is all horrific. The change is all disastrous. The change is all evil. Osterwell, who is the author of this book, and she will go to hell for it. Oh, actually, she's already in hell for it. She says, without police and without state oppression, if we get rid of the police, this is, again, I harken back to the show I did about Rousseau. This is kind of Rousseau's vision. If we just get rid of the institutions, if we get rid of state oppression, if we get rid of the police, then we can all live in an anarchic state of blissful savagery, where we can have things for free. Yeah, the things you can. What happens when you steal it all? What happens when you finish looting it all? What happens when all the stuff is gone because you stole it? Who's going to produce it? Who's going to sell it? If society is based on the principle of looting, if society is based on the principle of, quote, free, who's going to make it, produce it, sell it, transport it, ship it? I think my voice was so loud that it set off one of the cars here outside, the alarm on one of the cars. Hope it's not my car. Who is going to produce the stuff when society is just being looted across the board? So somebody says, Andrew says that NPR apologized for not challenging factual inaccuracies in the book. Isn't that beside the point? Yes, it is beside the point. The issue is not factual inaccuracies. The issue indeed is the evil ideas, the evil philosophy, the evil ideology that is projected in the book, that is reflected in the book. It's not about this particular concrete or that particular concrete. All right. Car stopped. No, I think it was actually me causing that. I think I pressed the wrong button on the the whole neighborhood is pissed off at me right now. All right. It was the looters trying to break into the car and take it. So yes, it's not about facts. It's about moral philosophy, political philosophy. It's about the fact that the whole point of civilization is to stop violence. The whole point of civilization is to protect your property, is protect your life your liberty, your property, your pursuit of happiness. That's the point of civilization. Civilization is the movement towards less violence, more protection of property, more privacy. But all of that is negated by the looters. They can just barge into your home and take your stuff, or your business and take your stuff whenever they want, and they would be justified. Why? Because they say the whole system of ownership, property, is innately and structurally white supremacists. Right? The whole thing is structurally white supremacist. And that's what they're about. They're about the destruction of private property. They're about the complete evisceration of private property. And indeed, our world, civilization, is built on a bedrock of private property and the rule of law. And they negate all of that. They reject all of that. I mean, what the people in the streets, what the looters, and what the intellectuals who support them, whether they are fully thought this through or not, this is the barbarians at the gate. They represent barbarism. They represent the worst possible outcome. And to me, it's less again about the people in the street smashing stuff. Always going to get a few of those. It's more about the intellectuals. It's more about these books, people who write these books, trying to justify it, trying to provide it with intellectual cover, trying to pretend that there's some intellectual or philosophical legitimacy to these ideas, to these actions. We're talking about the book In Defense of Looting. In Defense of Looting. There is a very good review of the book in Atlantic Magazine. I'm not sure what issue of the Atlantic Magazine, but it's written by an author, Graham Woods. It's an Atlantic essay in Atlantic Magazine. I would definitely recommend reading it. It truly is unbelievable. Now note, and I'll end with this on this particular issue right now, note that, oh, by the way, I just want to I'll make that point afterwards, so it won't be the last point I make. Note that on the book, In Defense of Looting, that doesn't recognize property rights, the property rights of this evil institution of white supremacists, on the cover of the book it says, right under the copyright notice, it says, the scanning, uploading, and distribution of this book without permission is a theft of the author's intellectual property. Thank you for your support of the author's rights. These people have no shame. You dedicate a whole book to the negation of the whole idea of rights, to the negation of the idea of property rights. And yet you declare, of course that's a publisher sticking it in because the publisher is one of these capitalist entities in a free market, a capitalist thing that is still holding on to remnants of the idea that private property is a good thing and intellectual property should and must be protected and defended. I don't know what this is. Did you? I have no idea what this is. You don't pronounce it. You pronounce my name Yaron. Yaron. Pretty simple. Yaron. All right. Somebody's asking about pronouncing my name. I've heard Kyle Kalinski's comments about Ayn Rand. I mean, Kyle is unbelievably ignorant and silly. Silly. At least the comment I saw was like that. All right, there was a question here. There was 20. I'll get to that. Okay, so here's the. I'll get to that question in a second. I will point out this: that property rights are under massive attack right now by the left and the right. So, it's easy to jump on the left, but the fact is that these rioters, that these looters, are a tiny fraction of people on the left. They do not represent even the mainstream left. Even, and yes, there's way too many apologists for the rioting and the looting. But that is not where mainstream America is. It's not where Biden, if Biden wins and let's say gets 40-something% of the vote, 40-something% of Americans don't believe that rioting and looting are a good thing. They don't believe in the negation of property rights. But you know what? 80% of Americans believe that when the right violates property rights, that's okay. And you could see this in Donald Trump's decision to cancel rent for 4 months, to basically abandon landlords and allow renters not to pay rent for 4 months. And to hell with the landlords. Now that's a massive violation of property rights, massive violation of contract law, a massive violation of the rule of law, but 80% of Americans support that. That is looting on a scale that the looters in Chicago and the looters in Oregon couldn't even imagine. This is real looting. And of course, nobody cares. Nobody cares. No so-called defenders of property rights and defenders of America and defenders of individual rights have stood up and accused the Trump administration of massive looting and rejection of property rights. Nowhere near as much as they do accusing of the rioters in the streets and the looting of luxury stores in Chicago. Instead of being able to show evil, violations of property rights on all sides, the left shows it on the right shows it on the left, and when they both agree, like looting landlords, that's cool, then nobody stands up for the landlords. Nobody stands up for the rule of law. Nobody stands up for contracts. Nobody stands up for property rights. To hell with it. It's a $20 question. It's not really an honest question, but it's a question. He put $20, so I'll answer it. I remember when objectivists were right-leaning. What happened? Now you support the Chinese communists. Talk about race theory, etc. What happened to you all? Why side with the neo-Marxists? Nobody's siding with the neo-Marxists. Objectivism has always been on the side of individual rights. We protect individual rights. Race theory is anti-individual rights. It's collectivist, it's tribal, it's racist. And therefore, we're against it as objectivists. Nobody supports the Chinese communists. Nobody who calls himself an objectivist supports the Chinese communists. But is China a communist country? Do you know what you're even talking about? Can you define communism? Have you ever been to China? China's fascist. And 5-6 years ago, it was moving towards massive freedom. And I have supported the movement of China towards freedom. And I have supported trading with individuals in China as they move towards freedom. As China has reverted back towards more authoritarianism over the last 3, 4, 5 years, I have withdrawn my support, become less and less supportive. Yeah, I've never said China set the best example during the COVID crisis. That is bullshit. I've never said that. China's authoritarianism during the COVID crisis is a disgrace. The country that set the best example for the COVID crisis was South Korea and Taiwan. Objectivists were never right-leaning in the sense of right being associated with race theory. Objectivists defend individual rights. And when the left attacks individual rights, we attack the left. When the right attacks individual rights, we attack the right. When the left tends to be in the White House, they tend to make most of the noise attacking individual rights, and we spend most of our time attacking them. When the right is in the White House and they are violating individual rights on scale, we attack them. Trump happens to be a particularly bad president when it comes to protecting individual rights. Therefore, we attack him viciously. China's concentration camps, China's oppressive behavior towards its intellectuals and towards free speech, I've attacked many, many times on the show. I know people in China who've suffered, and friendly with people in China who've suffered the consequences of the regime. I've spoken in China many times, and the people who've invited me have all gone underground, basically, or silent, or have been silenced. So, no, objectivists do not support the regime in China and have never supported the regime in China. I certainly support individuals in China who are trying to make China better. I certainly support businesses in China who are trying to break away from communism and provide real value and trade for that value, just as I support trade with many countries, with individuals in many countries. So, objectivism is neither, in my view, is neither right nor left. Objectivism is pro-individual rights. Objectivism rejects neo-Marxism in any form, and I've just spent all of the show so far condemning the neo-Marxists, if you want to call them neo-Marxists, the racists of the left, the looters, the preservers. But yet, it is stunning the number of people who, if you, and I've talked about this so many times, who if you attack Trump, if you criticize race, so-called race realism, you are now a supporter of the left. Even if you attack the left even more. It's, use your minds. Think for yourselves. Stop being mindless tribalists. Let's see. How do you see all this, but then want Biden to win? How does Trump destroy America, but Biden stop those nihilist forces? Oh, wow. Thank you. Thanks for being there. That's Australian dollars. I have no idea how much 400 Australian dollars is, but thank you for the support. Sounds like a lot. Maybe it is. Somebody will do the math and let me know. Let me just try to do this again. I mean, I'm so sick of the politics, but that's that's what obviously interests people because they show up more. I'm sick of doing this, but why do I want Biden win? How does Trump destroy America, but Biden stops the nihilistic forces? The fact is that Trump, in my view, has done more to move us towards authoritarianism in this country than any president. And another term of his will move us dramatically even closer towards authoritarianism. Trump, through his character, through his behavior, through his actions, has dramatically demeaned and diminished the role and the significance of the presidency and the dignity of the presidency, and has made the presidency and has pushed for the presidency to be, in many respects, all-powerful. He does not respect Congress. He does not respect the American system of government, and he projects that to everybody who's willing to listen. He has no respect for the institution of free speech. He has no respect for the institution of a free press. He has no respect for the American system of government and rule of law. That is my view. And he has no respect for them on the issues that, in my view, are the most crucial: separation of powers and free speech. To me, those are the most important issues, and those are the issues in which Donald Trump has no respect for that. He has also completely corrupted the Republican Party and moved it away from even its weak, pathetic defense of capitalism to becoming a completely statist, socialist of the right, if you will, political party. And the ban on, the moratorium on rents is just one little example of it. But his whole attitude towards towards business, and the fact that he would call CEO and tell them how to run a business and what to do with the business and all of that has moved the Republican Party away from capitalism, away from any ability to be a opposition party to the left, which it used to be. Now, on top of that, this guy wants an argument at $20 a pop. I guess we'll let him do it. On top of that, you could go on. His attitude towards trade has moved the Republican Party dramatically away from any kind of free market principles. Now, I do not support Biden. I hope Biden loses. I just hope Trump loses more. It's not like I think the left can cure this country. I don't think that Biden can move this country in a positive direction. I don't think this country is going to be better because of Biden. What I hope is that this country is better because Trump loses, which are two different things. Biden would continue to move the country in a negative direction. Maybe, in some respects, even faster than Trump. But Trump losing will provide an opportunity for the Republican Party to recover and become a legitimate or a weak, because they can be a strong, somewhat legitimate opposition party. That's my hope. The country is doomed unless there is an opposition to statism, not to leftism, to statism. Because it doesn't matter where the statism comes from, left or right, we will be doomed. I think it will come from the right. I've always thought it would come from the right. And Leonard Peikoff has written a masterpiece explaining why it will come from the right, called DIM, the DIM hypothesis. Either party winning is bad for the country. Either president is bad for the country. The only consideration I have is based on my view, based on my assessment of the future, based on my assessment of the current intellectual situation in the country. What will slow down the decline more? And I think a Republican Party centered around somebody like Nikki Haley and Ben Sass and some others is far better than a Republican Party centered around Josh Hawley, Tucker Carlson, and Donald Trump. That wing of the Republican Party needs to lose, and needs to lose big. And that's all I care about. The fact that Biden will be the beneficiary, I think of all the potential beneficiaries, he's one of the more benign ones, given what the Democratic Party has to offer. But I'm not pro-Biden. I hate Biden. Biden's an idiot. He has no answers to anything. But I will take Biden over Josh Hawley any day. And I will take Biden right now over Trump, because I think Trump and Josh Hawley are moving the Republican Party towards authoritarianism, towards statism, towards control of the economy, towards anti-Americanism. And I think that they have a chance to win far more than the far left has a chance to win. I think the far left will never be a dominant force in American politics. That's my view. America will never become socialist. Not in the egalitarian sense. America will never buy into the far left's agenda. But America will buy into a nationalist authoritarianism. And that's what I think we're heading towards. I think America's heading towards, some form of fascism. And it could be from the left, it could be from the right, but it's going to be a form of fascism. And those of you who think that a Biden presidency is going to plunge us into the depths of annihilation, I think are wrong. You're wrong. Just like when you thought that a second term of Obama was going to do that, or that a first term of Obama was going to do that. I thought you were wrong then. I think you're wrong now. I never supported Obama, but I thought you were wrong then. I just don't think the American system of government is built for radical, quick change. Every change is slow. My hope is that Biden wins, that the Republicans hold the Senate, that in 2 years Republicans take the House, and then in 4 years Republicans present us with an alternative like Nikki Haley, and I hate to put all my eggs in one basket, but somebody like her who's better, that we can all support and we can vote for. That's my hope. It's, to present me as a pro-leftist, to present me as a pro-Biden, to present me as pro their agenda is sick and evasive and dishonest and disgusting. Right? I mean, when Elizabeth Warren came out with her economic plan, it was Tucker Carlson who supported it. Elizabeth Warren, in my view, the worst of the Democrats, the worst economically of all the Democrats. Tucker Carlson supports her economic plan. I just want Trump to be rejected. I think he deserves to be rejected. I think his presidency has been such a failure that he deserves to be rejected. And, but I don't support Biden. I wouldn't say a positive thing about Biden. And I don't, other than he's not Trump. And I hope that Republicans, and I encourage you all, even if you vote for Biden, to vote across the board, Republican, other than that. So try to get as many House members Republican, try to get as many senators Republican, so that the left can't get its way. I don't think the left would get its way even if they won the Senate, but just to make sure. Just to make sure. Whoa, super chat questions are streaming in. It's good. You gotta put more dollars around it so that to get more of my attention, because there's so many super chat questions coming in that a $5 question is unlikely to be answered today. Let's see. The left is supporting the riots en masse. How else do you explain the failure of the DAs to press charges, of mayors to crack down? Trump is dedicated federalist. Sorry, but this COVID response and riot response proved this. Trump is not a dedicated federalist. Trump negates federalism. Trump has embraced federalism because he has no choice, because the military basically told him that they do not want to be deployed to cities, and there was a risk that they would not follow his orders, and so he backed away from that. But his instinct, his response, is what he wanted to do was to send the military into the states, right? And COVID, of course, he wanted national policy, but his national policy was so pathetic, and he delayed, and he denied, and he rejected, and the CDC and the FDA was so bad, and his leadership was so infantile and so pathetic that the governors took the reins. There was no leadership from Washington during all of February and all of March. So governors acted. Now, governors acted in authoritarian, horrific ways. Lockdown were a result of the governorship. But it's not because Trump wanted it. It's because some defaulted on it. Trump doesn't have a federalist bone in his body. He doesn't know what federalism is. Last message, right? What is more authoritarian than the lockdown? Yeah, the lockdown is the most authoritarian thing. But you forget that Trump supported the lockdown. In middle of March, when New York City was not locking down, Trump harassed de Blasio for not locking down the city. And indeed, since then, he has attacked de Blasio for not locking down soon enough and creating the crisis in New York. The idea that Trump is anti-lockdowns, he's anti-lockdowns only when it serves his political purpose, which is to be counter the left. But go back to middle of March and read what Trump was saying. Trump was not anti-lockdown. Indeed, Trump, I think if he could have gotten away with it, and if he thought that he could get votes out of it, he would have done a national lockdown. You remember Trump criticizing Georgia for opening up too soon? You remember these things? Or does the Trump lobotomization syndrome, lobotomy syndrome prevent you from remembering anything negative in your view that Trump has done? But Trump supported lockdowns. And he switches his position constantly based on what he thinks the voters want. China is looking to normalize authoritarianism, and Trump has befriended China. This idea that Trump is being tough on China is ludicrous. Because the way to be tough on China is not through trade. Trade is something we benefit from. Americans benefit from. Trade restrictions hurt Americans just as much as they hurt the Chinese. The way to be tough on China is diplomatically, withdrawing the embassy, beefing up our forces in the Pacific. There are lots of ways in which you can be tough on China. Trade is the stupid way to do it. Trade is the authoritarian way to do it. And Trump is not anti-trade, anti-China at all. He's anti-trade. And because we trade so much with China, it expressed itself in trade deals with China. Somebody asked in the chat before if I've read John Bolton's book. Yeah, you should read John Bolton's book and see what he writes about Trump's attitude towards China, his relationship with the dictator Xi, and with the dictator, of North Korea, and the dictator of Russia, and the dictator of Turkey, and the dictator of Saudi Arabia. Trump loves dictators. Biden is weak. Biden is not far left. Biden will try to hold the center. And you can help Biden hold the center by voting Republican for Senate and House. And we need to hold the center and keep the country from drifting left under Obama, under Trump or Biden for as long as you can. Yeah, somebody says leftists can be fascist. Yeah, absolutely. They can be fascist just as they can be racist. They are racist. The far left is fascist and racist. Biden's not far left. Kamala Harris is not far left. Kamala Harris speaks far left. But when she actually is in governing position, like she was when she was an attorney general in California, she was hated by the far left. This is why, to this day, the far left hates Kamala Harris. It's constantly, attacking Kamala Harris because they don't consider her far left, because she's not. And Kamala Harris is a power luster. And to win power in America, you have to govern from the center. This is why Trump has a chance here, because economically he's governed from the center left. The center left is where the country is, whether you like it or not, on economic policies, on property rights issues. The country is center left. That's where Biden is. That's where Trump is. The far left will be marginalized in a Biden administration. It will be silenced for the sake of power to the left. That is my, we're all in a sense speculating about the future. This is just my assessment of the future. Your assessment of the future could be different, and you will vote differently than I will vote. I'm not voting, but you will vote differently than I would suggest. Fine. I think you'll be wrong. And I think that a Trump re-election will be horrific. Okay, one more. LBJ sent federal troops to Alabama, and Clinton sent federal marshals to Florida. So what has changed that the armed forces would refuse an order from their commander? That's quite astonishing and very disturbing to me. What's changed is Trump. What's changed is Trump. I mean, you saw this in the Atlantic story about Trump's attitude towards the military and towards soldiers, which I believe, even though it's not, I don't know that it should have been published without citing sources, but I believe it because he's exuded that kind of attitude. And I think the generals would have resisted. Now, they would have sent their forces out anyway, but I think they argued really strongly to Trump not to do it. Now, remember, sending federal marshals is not the same as sending federal troops. Sending the National Guard is not the same as sending federal troops. Federal marshals were sent to Portland. How much good did they do in Portland? I mean, Huge numbers of federal marshals and other federal law enforcement agents were sent to Portland. Did they stop the riots? No. And I'm a huge advocate of using the National Guard in all these states. But I'm also, people voted for these idiots in Portland. They should suffer the consequences. And they should vote them out. Now, if it wasn't Trump in the White House, I might argue for more federal intervention. But I think federal intervention when Trump is president is very, very dangerous. Very dangerous. Okay, race realism is not about hatred. It's about explaining different outcomes in a way that don't require systemic oppression. As long as genetics is not understood, the left will use different outcomes to support Marxism. That is complete and utter evasion and dishonesty. Of course, race realism is about hatred. Race realism is about racism. It's about treating people as members of groups. It's about combating the left at their own game. Acknowledge their game is racism, so you adopt racism as well. But it has nothing to do with realism. It has nothing to do with science. It has nothing to do with outcomes. You can explain differential outcomes without requiring systemic racism, oppression, as Thomas Sowell has done, as I have done, as many people have done, without using the disgusting excuse of race, without asserting your racial superiority, without misusing and abusing statistics and IQ numbers, which you are doing in the name of math and science. Race realism is a despicable theory justifying white supremacists. And the only thing that race realists find a little embarrassing and difficult to figure out is that according to their methodology, Jews are smarter than them, and they struggle to figure out how that can be. And so are East Asians. But no, it's not an argument about anything, because it's not true. Because your whole argument about intelligence is wrong. You don't understand intelligence. You don't know what intelligence is. The idea that intelligence can be measured by one factor is absurd and ridiculous. And the idea that you can explain differences in outcomes because of average IQs in a population is ridiculous and bizarre and wrong. Scientifically wrong and morally wrong. When there are far better explanations, and I refer you to Tom Sowell for those explanations, for example, culture, intellectual leadership, education, quality of schools, government schools, by the way. I've said the ideas of race realism are despicable. And I've done, I'll be releasing another attempt at persuading those who still need persuading about IQ and about intelligence later today. There'll be another intelligence IQ video being released. All right, one more $20 question, and then I'm going to go to back to the topics. We're going to talk about California wildfires. Objectivism may not be self-evident, but once someone's read and studied Ayn Rand and rejected objectivism, there's no question in my mind that that person is dishonest on some level. I think that is too broad and too much. Sometimes the evidence is not clear to them. Sometimes there's psychological barriers which are not chosen and therefore not an issue of morality. I don't agree. I think there are many, many reasons why somebody could read Ayn Rand and not embrace it. I know people. Now, I do think that if somebody really studies it, figures it out, embraces and then rejects it, then they either didn't understand it, they never made it real. And I think many objectivists, many people who embrace Ayn Rand's ideals never make it real to themselves. And never actually become objectivists in the sense that they live it. And therefore, it's easy for them to shrug it off. And is that an issue of dishonesty? Is that an issue of error? Is that an issue of psychological problems? I think that's an open question, and we know very little about the causes of these things. All right. All right, let's see. Wildfires. California's burning. And I'm in California, so you should know. Fires just starting now in the LA that looked pretty brutal. Last week and the week before that, there were massive fires in Northern California. It's, the sky was, the soot in the sky, much worse than Beijing. It's worst polluted day, much worse than California's pollution from automobiles or any other source has ever been. The fires in California are truly horrific, destroying property. Of course, I guess the left doesn't care about property. Destroying property, but they're destroying people's health. It's in the air. Now, this is the exercise that John Cochran wants you to consider. Imagine that these fires all happened on private property. Let's imagine a world in which Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg owned thousands of acres in Northern California. Thousands of acres that they did not tend to, that they did not do anything to prevent fires, for example, that they just left wild. And imagine that those fires had been set by lightning or whatever, and that they were now polluting the air of Californians, destroying property, destroying the quality of life. Imagine what the response would have been of everybody. I mean, there would be massive condemnation. There would have been studies to determine why this was happening. There would have been efforts to force them to more responsibly take care of their land or just nationalize it and take it away from them. But none of that is happening because the land is owned by the state of California. None of that is happening, even though these fires are preventable. These fires happen in land that has not been cleared for years and years and years. Land where fuel for the fire just amasses. Vast areas that are just ready to go up in flames, and where the government does nothing to clear them because environmentalists don't believe in touching even a piece of wood on the ground. Right? And instead of that, the fires are blamed on global warming. And to prevent the fires, California is building a high-speed train that's subsidized by taxpayers that will reduce Californians' contribution to carbon by 0.1% and will make, let's assume, will make the climate less warm. Instead of going up 3 degrees, it'll go up 2.999999 degrees. And that they're willing to pay for. But to clear the forest, no, can't do that. I mean, if global warming is real, if the temperatures are going up, if we can expect more fires in the future, then shouldn't we be investing in clearing the forest? Shouldn't we be investing in more firemen? Shouldn't we be investing in more helicopters and planes, more ways in which to stop the fires, mitigate the fires? Shouldn't we be investing all that money that going to this stupid train, put that into equipment to stop the fires? If we really cared, we know that even if we adopt AOC's total Green New Deal, even if every country in the world adopted a Green New Deal, according to the scientists, those that the left believes in, that would have a minimal impact on climate change. So instead of doing all that, why not take the money and deal with the consequence of climate change? For example, fires. Let's start reducing the probability of fires by controlled burns, by clearing the forest floor, by investing heavily in fire equipment. But no, the left wants none of that. Because the left doesn't care if California burns. The left indeed doesn't care if the quality of life in California gets reduced, because then people, and the left wants people to move out. They want people to stop living in rural California. They want to huddle all of us into cities. Of course, nobody can afford to live in the cities. That's a different story. The left doesn't want better infrastructure. The left doesn't want us to control fires better. The left wants to watch it burn, like they do in Portland, but just on a grander scale. It's truly, truly stunning that they just are letting these fires burn, blaming climate change, and doing nothing to try to prevent it. All right, one more question from our race realist, again because he's putting $20 in. That we accept Jewish and Asian higher intelligence proves that white supremacy is not the goal. Sam Harris and Stephen Molyneux are supremacists in your view? Absolutely. Well, Stephen Molyneux is absolutely. The bell curve argues against cognitive stratification. Murray is no racist. Murray is no racist. He's just a pure statistician and a poor extrapolator of data and has a poor understanding of intelligence. Sam Harris is a massive disappointment. But it's interesting that you choose to quote Sam Harris when it's convenient, and you don't choose to quote Sam Harris when it's not. Sam Harris is also a leftist. And yet I'm sure you're rabidly anti-left. And yet Sam Harris is a leftist on economic issues. And yet, again, you quote him when it's convenient. We don't. I think Sam Harris is wrong on this issue. I think Sam Harris, if really gave this some thought, he's wrong. I would refer you to Nassim Taleb's critique of the whole IQ debate. But IQ is one measure of intelligence. It's a flawed measure of intelligence. IQ tests how good you do in IQ tests. And it's very good in identifying people who have low cognitive ability. But beyond about a score of 100, it becomes less meaningful and actually almost not meaningful. It doesn't matter beyond 100. So IQ tests are interesting. They have some value at the margin. But even corporations, businesses that really want to test people's intelligence for their own employment don't use IQ tests. They use a variety of other intelligence tests because IQ tests are just one and they're marginal and they're limited. And they can be gamed and they can be improved upon, and education is a huge factor and culture is a huge factor and all these things are factors. But look, let's be very clear. Stefan Molyneux is an anti-Semite. He believes Jews have a higher IQ, and they use that higher IQ to exploit people, to take advantage of people. Nick Fuentes is an anti-Semite. These people are anti-Semite. All you have to do is watch Stefan Molyneux's videos on Israel to see how big of an anti-Semite he is. Even before he was a race realist, Molyneux was an anti-Semite. The way he talks about Jews is the way anti-Semites talk about Jews. Now, nobody ever admits to being an anti-Semite. Nobody actually says, send them to the concentration camps. Or very few people say they control the world. But they imply it. They suggest it. And I've seen several Stefan Molyneux videos where he does that. So absolutely, Stefan Molyneux is a anti-Semite and probably a racist. I think others have documented quite well that Stefan Molyneux is an out-and-out racist. So, yeah, Sam is mistaken. Charles Murray, who I've met, is, I think, mistaken. And outside of his area of specialization, which is sad, because he's a smart guy. All right. Have we crashed? Do you guys still have video? It looks like it maybe is back. All right. Did video go down there? Anyway, if somebody could tell me if video went down, that would be helpful. All right, we got one 500 Norwegian krona. I can't remember if that's a lot of money or not, if that's $20. I assume it's $20, so I'm going to take the question. How about using a term selfless narcissist to differentiate a Bernie Madoff from a Jeff Bezos. They have no real self, integrity, honesty, pride, and want only to project an image of greatness and admire that image reflected in the minds of others. I like that. I really like that. Selfless narcissist. Or it could be a selfless narcissist, or it could be a selfless predator. Peter Schwartz, I think, suggested the word predator. But I actually like the selfless narcissist quite a bit. But yeah, let's keep bouncing around ideas like this and see if we can come up with something that captures Bernie Madoff, captures the drug addict, captures Trump, or politicians generally, power lusting politicians, right? Not just Trump, who's exceptionally narcissistic, but even politicians who are less narcissistic, but are still not. People would like to call them selfish because they go for power, particularly libertarians. But what would we call them? We wouldn't call them selfish. We'd call them selfless. But selfless what? I mean, many of them are predators. A lot of them are probably just mixed cases. But yeah, predation is what Peter suggested, and I like that as well. But I like selfless narcissist as well. And there's something there. Something there. All right. Definitely exploiter is part of the predation. Yeah. All right. Let's see. I think that's the last of the $20 questions. All right. Wildfires again. It's what's going on is truly despicable, truly disgusting, and a real problem of the left. All right, let's talk about two other issues, and then I'll go back to Super Chat, and we've actually got some Super Chat from yesterday and from maybe even 2 days ago, and keep going. Frank, you get ignored because you're not putting $20 into the question. I'm not answering questions that are less than $20, or at least trying not to. All right, Elijah is giving me advice on how to notice the high dollar. But I have a feeling that that the high dollar amount is reflect. Do they do the transference? Do they do the conversion to dollars, or is it just a number in the thing? I don't know. Right. Anyway, let's see. Let's talk about COVID. I'm sick of COVID, but let's talk about COVID. Two things about COVID. This is just I don't know if this is serious or not, but it's so scary, despicable, that I guess I have to take it seriously just in case it's not a joke. But this is an article published in, what's the name? In the conversation.com. Conversation.com. And the title of the article is "A Morality Pill May Be U.S.'s Best Shot at Any Coronavirus." A morality pill. I mean, there's so much here that we could talk about. Right? So the idea is this. The assumption is, we all know that if everybody wore a mask and if everybody behaved responsibly in terms of social distancing, then coronavirus would end. It would be gone. It would be done, right? And the problem is that there's a bunch of people who refuse to do it. And then even though we try to force them to do it through all kinds of coercive means, they still refuse to do it. We can't control everybody. It's called the problem of non-cooperation. Some people don't cooperate. Could we get them to cooperate through what they call moral enhancement? In other words, are there drugs we could use that would encourage them to be more cooperative. Now, it's moral enhancement because the question is, could we find psychoactive substances that make people more empathetic or altruistic or cooperative? Maybe even, and this is their way of thinking about this, increase their ability to reason and think through issues long term. Thank you, Elijah. I appreciate that. It turns out that Oxycontin, the chemical that, among other things, induces labor or increases the bond between a mother and child, may cause a person to be more empathetic and altruistic, more giving and generous. The same goes for a drug called psilocybin, the active component of magic mushrooms. These substances, and I'm quoting from this article, have been shown to lower aggressive behavior in those with antisocial personality disorder and to improve the ability of psychopaths to recognize emotions in others. So let's give Oxycontin or magic mushrooms to everybody. And as a consequence, they will behave more empathetically, which means they'll wear a mask. No, Jennifer, they won't want to cuddle. They'll just want to wear a mask and socially distance because their empathy was rise up. Now, the problem is that Oxycontin may also cause some people to be more pro-social. It also encourages I can't believe that we're having this conversation. Oxycontin, it turns out, appears to encourage ethnocentrism. In other words, race realism. It encourages racism. So while it encourages empathy, it encourages empathy with people who look like you. And therefore, we don't want that. That's dangerous. So we need to find a combination. We need the biotech industry to engage in creating a morality pill. And this guy says it's possible. We could find the right chemical combination, not to make us racist, but to make us love our neighbor as ourselves, to make us turn the other cheek, and to make us be responsible neighbors, and to wear masks. Indeed, to do as we are told. Now, this is the final paragraph, and this is what makes me think, is this serious? No, this is a real article. You can look this up, conversation.com, put a morality pill, and conversation.com. This is the final paragraph. And this is what makes me think, maybe this is a joke. But I'm not convinced, right? Because it can't really be the case that somebody's advocating for this. But here's the final paragraph, the final part of the final paragraph. The scenario in which the government forces a morality booster upon everyone is far-fetched. But a strategy like this one could be a way out of this pandemic, a future outbreak, or the suffering associated with climate change. That's why we should think of it now. In the paragraph before this, he writes, as some have agreed, a solution would be to make moral enhancement compulsory or administer it secretly, perhaps by the water supply. Now this, my friends, is how you get conspiracy theories. So this guy is advocating, and I have no idea who this person is, for us to secretly put a morality drug, a drug that makes us more altruistic, more compliant, more obedient, more conventional, into the water supply. Now, there's so many issues here, right? if you're, in a sense, just doing it because the chemicals are telling you to do it, is it morality? Isn't morality about choice? But the fact that anybody could print this, the authoritarian nature of this, the setting us up for authoritarianism, the destruction of the human mind and human choice and human reason that this involves, the idea that somebody could advocate for doing it in secret in the water supply. It says he's an ethicist. The idea that this would be done in the name of ethics, in the name of morality. It's just so shocking, so horrific, so unimaginable. And yet we live in a world in which this can be considered. This could be considered. Unless, this is a parody of conspiracy theories. Which it might be, and if so, it's pretty funny, but I wish they'd let us know that it was a parody. Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. All right, one other thing about COVID, and this is just me repeating what I've said all along. Look, again, this is where both everybody seems to be irrational about COVID. The left, many people on the left, many people, left and right, are panicked, hysterical about COVID. Going to a restaurant is reason to publicly shame somebody, even if the restaurant's outdoors and does distancing, social distancing. There is particularly among the left, particularly among young people, it seems, there is a real hysteria and a demand for social conformity, and a demand to follow instructions and to follow orders that culturally is just scary. And an attitude that is anti-science, anti-statistics, anti-data. This idea that we're all going to die, that this is somehow horrific. There's some kind of massive, unprecedented disaster on a scale nobody can imagine. And then on the right, I keep seeing these articles that say, oh no, it's the flu. It's nothing. It's insignificant. We shouldn't pay attention to it at all. All, again, statistical ignorance. Making a big deal out of the case fatality rate versus the infection fatality rate. We've been talking about this forever. This is not new. There's nothing new here. This is a disease. For old people is unbelievably deadly. Much worse than the flu. For young people, it's less deadly than the flu. For people in the middle, it depends on how healthy you are. If you're generally healthy, it's the flu or less. If you're obese or have diabetes or have heart disease, it could be much worse than the flu. That's the nature of the beast. It doesn't get easily captured by any one number, by any one statistic, by any one way to present this. If you have a healthy immune system, if you're healthy, and if you're under 65, you're going to do fine, probably. I mean, they're outliers, but generally you're going to be fine. If you're old, if you're over 85, certainly if you have also health problems and you're over 85, this is deadly. Anywhere from 15 to 25% of older people die from this, who get diagnosed with it, who probably have it. And even if they don't die for it, the symptoms are really bad and they go through a really, really, really bad time. You do not want to be in a hospital connected to a machine, even if you survive. Not good. Why can't people hold complexity? Everybody wants simple. It's either deadly or it's not deadly. It's either really, really bad or it's nothing at all. Why can't it be really, really bad for some people and nothing at all for some people? And why can't we design policies that take that into account? Protect old people. Isolate them. Social distancing. I've got a friend who I get together with in Southern California, is in his late 80s. And every time before I go to see him, I get tested. It's a 15-minute test, costs a little bit of money, and I get tested. So I know that when I'm with him, there's no way I can give him the COVID, because for me, COVID is nothing, but for him, it's deadly. It'll kill him. When I meet with my son, I don't get tested beforehand, because I'm not that worried about him getting it. And I'm not that worried about him giving it to me. I've been arguing about this from the beginning, but nobody seems to be able to hold this, even many of you, because I get emails. This is a disease that's deadly for old people. Protect them, isolate them, cocoon them is a word that Amesh Adalja used. The rest of us can probably live fine. I strongly believe that wearing a mask reduces the probability, doesn't protect you, but reduces the probability of you getting it and of you inflicting it on other people. So wear a mask. What's the big deal? But if you don't want to wear a mask, fine. But if a restaurant demands that you wear a mask, wear it. It's their property. So this is all very simple. It's very easy to understand. Indeed, I don't think Amesh or I have changed anything since the beginning of this. I've never been for lockdowns. I said maybe you could justify a short-term lockdown when everything else has failed and the hospitals are being overrun and the government owns, basically is responsible for the hospitals. So you shut down for a week or two just so you slow down to flatten the curve, as they said. But there's zero reason to shut down other than in an imminent emergency and collapse of the hospital system. And even then, it has to be temporary. All these other restrictions are ridiculous. Isolate, cocoon the old people, and let everybody else live. Not because I'm going for herd immunity, but because that's just makes sense. People should be able to choose. You're afraid, stay home. You're not afraid, go out. It's very simple. Make choices based on your values. Make choices based on your priorities. Make choices based on your life. I don't get why this is so hard for people. But it is. It seems to be. It's all or nothing for everybody. It's the either you're Republican or Democrat. You're left or right. You're pro lockdowns or you're not, or you're pro nothing. There's no nuance. There's no sophistication. There's no thought. There's no thinking going on. No thinking. And everybody's arguing about this statistic or that statistic. Statistics are relevant, but the statistics that are interesting are the nuanced statistics. The statistics that are interesting are mortality within particular ages, within particular disease groups, within particular groups. That's what's interesting. And that's what should drive policy and decision making. Not the kind of one-size-fit-all mentality that everybody seems to have. And I've been saying this for months. It's not hard, people. This isn't hard. Make values based on your decisions. Don't choose for other people. And do whatever you can to prevent old people from getting it. I think that's just the basic, decent, pro-life thing to do. Yes, binary thinking. People can only think in binaries. Life is not binary, not in that way. All right. You know what? We're gonna do debt another time. I'll postpone debt. I'll take that out because there's a lot to say about it, and we're already at an hour and 25 minutes. Let's do a few super chat questions, and then we'll go on from there. I'll start with the $20 ones. I think this is. This is right. The Alliance tried the same thing as Serenity. This is about the morality pill. That's right. I forgot about that. Good call. The Alliance tried the same thing in Serenity. They put a chemical in the atmosphere of a colony world, accidentally killing them all because it worked too well. The people start doing everything, including eating. No, but what it also did, if you remember, in Serenity, is it created the monsters. I forget the name of the monsters. It created these cannibals. And so the chemical created the cannibals, who then killed the people on this planet. And now the cannibals are prying on everybody else out in open space. And nobody knows where they came from. Nobody knows how they created it. And what Serenity discovered is that it is the product of the bad experiment where they were trying to use this drug, the Reavers, thank you, the Reavers. They were trying to use this drug to eliminate violence from society. And instead, they created the Reavers. Right? Oh, sorry, I spoiler alert. But Serenity is a great movie. I love Serenity. I love Firefly as a TV show, one of the best TV shows I've seen. And I actually really liked the movie as kind of a sequel to Serenity. I thought it was excellent. Excellent. All right. By the way, I everything's been flowing and the money's been flowing and everything. I haven't had a chance to really plug the show. Please like the show. We've got 172 people watching now. We've had on and off a bunch of people over the last hour and a half. So please like the show before you leave. Press the like button. Please share it if you like it, particularly the short videos that I put out. Please share those, expand the audience. The only way to really expand the audience is to get new people to watch it. And that you can do by sharing the show. And of course, if you value what I do, if you get value from what I do, from what I say, from our interaction, then please support the show. You can support it by Super Chat, and we've had a very generous couple of days. Yesterday, we had over $1,000 on the Super Chat because of a match by Ragnar of the Desert, and today has been really good. We got very generous contribution from Australia and some other good ones. Let's see. And finally, you can support the show on a regular basis, kind of on a monthly basis, which is the most valuable to me. If you go to yaronbrookshow.com/support, or if you do it on Patreon or Subscribestar, and then I know exactly how much money is coming every month, but you can do so on a monthly basis over there. Please do it. I really appreciate this. I'm not making any income these days from speaking, from traveling around the world and speaking. This is the only source of revenue that comes from my intellectual work. I appreciate it. If we could make this self-sustaining in some way, that would be a real boost and really meaningful. If we could do that, I think if we could replicate what we did last month, every month, we're well on our way to getting this towards self-sufficiency. So we've got a lot of work to do this month to get to last month. So thank you all, and I appreciate it if you supported the show. All right, last couple of questions. Is Donald Trump like the Bible? People just read whatever they want out of him. No. The Bible, there is no truth. There is no objective reality to the Bible. The Bible truly is, in many respects, you can find anything you want in it, and it really is there. It's just inconsistent. It doesn't, and you can't match it to reality because we don't have what really happened. We don't know what it is. So the Bible is actually truly subjective in the sense that you can find what you want in it, and then you can interpret what's written, partially because of language, partially because of context, partially because it's written in an ambiguous way, what you want in it. You can't find atheism in the Bible, although, there's certain characters in the Bible that are skeptical and they present an ethical argument that then is rebuked. But you can find a lot in it. You can find socialism in it, you can find communism in it, you can find capitalism in it, if you want to, if you really look hard, right? Donald Trump is an objective reality. He is what he is. I think what I say about Donald Trump is the truth. It's not my interpretation, it's factual. Most of the people who adamantly support Donald Trump, I'm not talking about people who view him as evil, but the lesser of two evils. I'm talking about people who view him as good. People who say he's the best president we've ever had. People who think that everything he said is true. People who buy into every one of his lies. They're evading reality. They're ignoring the facts. And you can see that in their selective memory about what happened. None of them remember the fact that he basically said that COVID didn't exist or was minor, trivial, or would be solved in a matter of days throughout February. None of them remember that he advocated for lockdown in mid-March. None of them remember that he opposed the opening up of Georgia. That's subjectivism. That's just people finding what they want in ignoring reality in order to find what they want in him. Now, there's a sense in which they do that with the Bible, but the Bible is ambiguous. Trump is not. Trump's horror is objectively demonstratable. You know, people who justify his cozying up to the brutal dictator of North Korea. If any Democrat had done that, the same people would be horrified. It would be the end of the world, sanction of evil, the most disgusting foreign policy thing Americans have ever done. But Donald Trump did it. It must be amazingly good. But that's not being objective. That's not being objective. Thank you, Andy. 26.17 Canadian dollars. That must round out to like $20 or something. I know many philosophy students who say there is no free will, so life is deterministic, and no one can be valued for their achievement. Example: Bill Gates. I mean, that's straight out of John Rawls. Is this deterministic mindset the root of the problem we see today? To a large extent, yes. I mean, it's an ancient problem. Determinism goes back to the ancient Greeks. It's and Christianity, as certain streams of Christianity have determinism. Calvin and Luther were both determinists. But there's a big, yes, so, and many philosophers have been determinists, and much of popular culture today is determinism. Remember, racism is determinism. Egalitarianism is determinism. Marxism is determinism. In a different way than the modern Marxists use it, but Marx himself was a determinist, right? It was all historically inevitable. What was the future was pre-written in a sense. It was all the product of forces within nature that you had no impact on. So determinism is a major force in the culture and has been for a long time, and it is gaining steam. And of course, determinism leads to collectivism. So what you're seeing today is epistemological determinism, or metaphysically determinism, and then collectivism and statism. And that's the right, and that's the left. And in that sense, they're the same. It's just their collectivism is different, and the form that their statism is different. But their fundamental epistemology is not that different. Yeah. Luther was an evil mystic, one of the worst, yes. And he was a determinist. He believed that by the time you were born, God already knew if you were going to hell or to heaven. So what you did in your life, in a sense, didn't matter because you were already predestined for hell or heaven. So it was out of your control. If you were a sinner, it wasn't in your control. That had already been predetermined. Okay, good. Thanks, everybody. Good. Yeah, I enjoyed the show. Those of you who haven't listened to yesterday's show, I'd like to encourage you to, and let me know what you thought of it. I thought it was really good. I thought I said some new, interesting things, maybe not completely new, but organized in a new way. But I'm curious in people's opinions of it. I certainly think I made some new integrations. A show like yesterday's is far more valuable to me than a lot of the other shows because I do think there are new integrations and new material there. And I'm interested in what your views are on it. So I would like input. So if you can comment on the show and the YouTube thing, I'll read it. I don't read them all, but for that show, I'll read it. The day before, when I talked about the economy and interest rates and stuff, also, again, I think I made some interesting integrations, made some interesting new points. And I would really like to get feedback from you guys about it. And I'm not just talking about the live people, but also people who watch later. So, yeah, please let me know about those things. I think shows like today, which deal with politics and current events, I find less interesting because they're less challenging and they're less expanding my knowledge and I think your knowledge. But I thought yesterday's show should have expanded your knowledge. I'm curious what you guys think. So please put it in the comments and don't be shy. Let me know what you thought. Okay, last question, because it came in at over $20. This is really my last one, Elijah says. John Rawls is wrong even if you grant him his premise. you can't grant a risk premise. But okay, you would not agree to an equal distribution, but the one with the highest expected value utility. That system would be capitalism. Well, but he is saying if you didn't know that you might be born with, I don't know, to take the IQ question, right? You might be born with very low intelligence. Then materially, you might be better off under some form of a welfare state than under capitalism. And since you don't know, and you can't even assess the probability, then he is assuming everybody is risk averse. But it's that his premise is so silly. This is a veil of ignorance. You get to make a decision about the system of government before you're born, before you have any identity, before you know what you are, before you know who you are, but you still have to make a decision, which is bizarre and contradictory and silly. That's his. Then it really depends on your risk preferences. If your risk preference is really, really, really high, then you might vote for socialism. But the point is, how can you have a risk preference if you don't have an identity? The whole thing is self-contradictory. The whole thing is garbage. So once you grant the premise, you can't come to a decision because there has to be a basis by which this group behind the veil of ignorance makes a decision, but they're ignorant. But I assume they're ignorant also about their own risk preferences. All right, one last one. Ignacio asks, hi, Yaron, I live in Europe. I'm planning to do a coast-to-coast trip through the U.S. Great. 40 days. Do you think I can do it in June 2021 and that the COVID problem will be solved at least partially? I think so. I hope so. I think so. I'm planning to do a trip through Europe in August of 2021, Northern Europe. So, I hope it's also solved in Europe. But yes, I do think it'll be solved by then. We'll have a vaccine by then. And 40 days is a great. I did that when I was 18. I did a trip from Washington, D.C. through all the national parks, all the way to Los Angeles. That took 40 days. I think we drove 20,000 miles, some ridiculous number, zigzagged through the country. And then I hitchhiked from Los Angeles back to the East Coast, all the way back to Washington, D.C. But somebody asked what countries. My plan for next summer is to do Scandinavia. That's the plan. I'd like to drive through Scandinavia to go to the Norwegian fjords. Also go to great restaurants. So my road trips are usually scenery and restaurants. And museums, of course. But scenery, restaurants, and museums. Those are the three things. And so I would start in Copenhagen and then go to Sweden, go to Denmark, and back. So something like that. A road trip like that. We'll see. All right. No, I'm not going to Russia, and I'm not getting on any Sputnik. No way am I getting on a Russian rocket. Plus, yeah, ain't happening. Frank says, can you use opportunist for my term, the bad guy? I don't think so. I think it's too ambiguous. And again, is a drug addict an opportunist? Or is he just a selfish narcissist? Or what is he exactly? So no, I don't think opportunist works. And it's not harsh enough for the predator. For the Bernie Madoff, it's not just an opportunist. He's much worse than that. Or think of somebody who is worse than Bernie Madoff, commits violent crimes. What is he? He's a predator. Predation is a good word. And it has, okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your Labor Day. Go and barbecue. Go and have some fun. I'm going to the pool, hanging out with a friend, and got some food coming later, and should be a good day. I will see you all on Wednesday, 8 p.m. East Coast time. Wednesday at 8 p.m. East Coast time. See you all then. Thank you for all the super chatters. Thank you for all the supporters. Thank you, everybody.